welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm Courtney,
And I'm MK.
and how are you?
Yeah,
What a way to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing that I said I was going to tell you on the podcast, but that doesn't feel like a whole story. I can't remember
Okay.
what I thought I was going to share. Um, Today was wildly interesting. And not all of it was in a good way, but like it was a day. It was a day. Um, But the high points of the day, only one of them really feels like a high point when I describe it, but the high points of the day were one, um, I got to pet a miniature horse and two goats. The miniature horse, her name is Princess, and she is currently pregnant with a
Mm.
mule baby. She was bred by a donkey, and so she's gonna have a little baby mini mule, and I want to love it. And she was very snuggly with me, and we were talking about how I'm an animal whisperer and
Yeah.
I just have that effect on them. The goats were named Mr. T and Barney.
Those are wildly different
Wildly
concepts.
different.
I was like, yeah, goats are they can be pretty intense. And then you're like,
Well,
Barney. And I was like, oh, well, okay.
yeah. Well, so Barney, they thought were told he was going to be a full-bred Nigerian goat, which Nigerian goats are the really tiny, tiny, tiny ones that are like only milk goats. They like weigh 25
Mm.
pounds. They're like very, very small. Barney weighs 120 pounds and he is significantly taller than 19 inches. He is definitely a mutt. There is some meat goat somewhere in there because he is also the widest Nigerian I've ever seen. Um, and I was like, "You're packing a punch there, Barney." um, Mr. T is it was so funny. The women who were like showing us these animals, they said that we figured out that we were talking about how the mini horse weighed 420 pounds. And so they were talking about, well, they're like, oh, how much do you think Mr. T weighs? And one of my eighth graders just goes without hesitation, without any like full confidence, just goes 220. That is 100% exactly how much Mr. T weighs. I was like, how the fuck did you
You
do
think you're
that?
the animal whisperer.
And I was like, how the fuck did you do that? So yeah, I was just playing with farm animals today. It was really
Oh,
great. And then the other high point is that I found a new podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, but um it's called, oh shit, what's it called? Oh, it's called Deadly Diocese, and
ooh.
it is about the shit show that is the church in Buffalo. But it's not like a
In
local,
Buffalo?
yeah, it's not a local podcast. It's a Wondery podcast. Like it's a fucking legit,
Wondering?
like it's a legit thing, and it's about the shit show
Ooh.
that is Buffalo's church system right now.
Have you started it?
No, my principal just sent it to me though. She's been listening to it, and she was like, "You have to listen to this."
Send it to me
Okay,
because now I want to know about it.
yeah.
Like, check back in 3.5 months, and that's when I'll have started it and gotten
Oh, for
really
sure.
deep into it.
For
But
sure. I will once I actually get to watching it, I will let you know. But like I listened to an episode of My Favorite Murder from 2016 today. So like I'm not really 100% there.
I've
I'll,
been so disconnected from podcasts lately. I've been listening to, I think the only thing I've really listened to lately is Sinisterhood, and I've listened to like 3 episodes.
yeah,
Um,
I'm real. I mean, I've been listening nonstop, but
yeah,
I'm caught up to
yeah.
2016. So um
I am not caught up to anything, but I do need to get caught up because I don't know if I told you, I got tickets to the Friday the 13th show for and that's when we drink. It's
you
gonna
did
be in
not tell
Tarrytown.
me.
So
Ooh.
I had some drinks and then they announced their ticket sales. And I was like, Dom, and everybody was like, who's going? And Dom was like, I don't have money. I was like, if I buy a ticket, 2 tickets, will you drive me there and drive me back to New Jersey to stay at Noel's? Because he has a car, but he lives out in
Yeah.
Long Island.
Yeah.
And he was like, yes. I was like, excellent. Let's go to Tarrytown.
Done.
So
That's amazing. No,
exciting.
I was like, I haven't, the only show, I worked a show on went Monday, but it was the local theater awards, like the Buffalo
Oh
version of
yeah.
the Tonys, and it was
The
fine.
Tonys are Sunday?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is also
I kept
Father's Day.
thinking, oh yeah, I kept thinking they were the 12th, and then I was like, today's the 12th. They're not today.
Yeah, no, they're Sunday, which is also Father's Day, but also I really won't be paying that much attention to them because I'll be working MJ.
Yeah, I'll just be working my life away.
Yeah, no, I'll be at MJ Sunday night, so next week I'll
Um,
have musicals to report, but nothing currently.
I
So,
can't wait to hear what you think.
oh, that reminds me that my monthly payment for my season tickets for next year will come out this week.
MJ was one of the first shows I saw when I actually moved into Manhattan because I could walk there because it was on 52nd Street.
Nice.
I mean, it was like a 24-minute walk because it was on the other side of town, but I just walked
Yeah,
straight down my street down to
for
MJ, and
25
it was
minutes.
nice for 25 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So I don't
well,
know. I'm just kind of discombobulated. I'll be better. We have these new shirts that are like for my school that it's closing.
mm,
And it's beautiful. But this morning the music teacher sent me a picture of a White Claw can and said that's what our shirts look like. And he's not wrong. So
he's not wrong. You're correct.
yeah, so but
Nice.
that's where my mental headspace has been for the entire day.
Yeah. Well, I have a home. I got a new
Yay!
ID. So I'm not showing you all my personal information.
Correct.
But I have a home now. I have gotten my Louisiana driver's license. I will now be able to apply for my passport. I will now be able to apply for healthcare. And we'll just pretend like I had it this whole time. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so things are shaping up for me. In that realm, I'm starting to, I know it's been 2 months, but I'm starting to feel a little settled, I feel like.
Nice.
But we went to so me and Nick went this morning to get well, we were supposed to both get IDs. He was going to upgrade to the real ID, and I was just going to get a real ID.
Yeah.
But he is not for renewal yet. So we waited for an hour for them to figure out how to transfer state to state. They had to call. We went to the express because it's faster.
Yeah.
But we were there for probably an hour because nobody knew how to do it. And they kept trying to call the state, and the state wasn't answering. It was a whole situation. But I did eventually get an ID. My picture is an ID picture, but it is better than my New York ID picture was. So
Listen,
we have
my
color here, so you can tell that my lips match my shirt, which is nice.
my ID picture is still the one I got when I got my permit when I was 16.
I think
So
that's what
it's
Rachel's is too.
so like literally don't have the same hair color, my face barely the same shape.
You can see my face. That's fine. I don't
Oh
know how to smile in
yeah.
pictures, but like it's better than my New York one was, and I won't show you that because they took that one because that's how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so I did that today. So I'm getting more settled. Tomorrow I'm finally going back to my book club that I have not gone back to in months because I'm like, I'm gonna do that, and then I don't do it.
are you
I
ready
read the
for the
book.
wildness?
You're 12. You are 12 in your pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the oldest picture. I love it though. I love it though. But yeah, so I'm doing book club tomorrow. We read a book called Meet Me in the Margins, which is a rom-com book where the main character is an author working in an editing house. Like it's
Dumb.
wonderful.
Oh,
No, it's
wonderful.
amazing. It's
Okay.
amazing.
Well, sometimes those things are like dumb, but in a good way.
Oh yeah, no, it was really good. I know it's not for everyone. If you want to read a rom-com that relates to you, that's not how that works with people who aren't writers. But it's really great. I really liked it. I read it in like 2 days.
Nice.
Because I mean it's a rom-com. I read those in like 2 days anyways. But yeah, so I'm getting back to doing that, and that'll be tomorrow night. I'm very excited.
Nice.
Um, Something else was happening. Oh, I'll have stories for next week, but I don't think I can tell you until the next week because they're for Rachel's birthday, and I don't want her to accidentally overhear. Oh
Yeah.
no, because we're meeting on. No, I can tell you because we're meeting after everything happens. So stay tuned. Fun things are happening next week.
Yay.
It's gonna be a good time. So yeah, so I guess my headspace is fine. It's better than it was earlier. I have some orange chicken that I'm eating,
Yeah.
and then my DPZ that I'm chugging. So while we're in this whatever headspace we happen to be in, can you enlighten us?
I will. And this will have to do with things that you and I talked about off of the podcast. So it's great.
Great.
But again, we're still chugging along through Grey's Anatomy. So
Mhm. We're on like day 3. Yeah, we're gonna be here a while. You're
oh
like
yeah,
chugging along.
no. Yeah, chugging along. And we're in season 1, episode 4. So it's fine. Um because I skip the ones that are very like medical or like very
Mhm.
character relevant because in the early seasons they were sometimes less broad.
General, yeah.
Yeah. So intimacy is a 4-syllable word. For here are my heart and soul. Please grind them into hamburger and enjoy. It's both desired and feared, difficult to live with, and impossible to live without. Intimacy also comes attached to life's 3 R's: relatives, romance, and roommates. There are some things you can't escape, and other things you just don't want to know.
Yep. I like it, the 3 R's.
My
2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's what that's like 2 out of 3 is usually what you need to survive, right?
right. What if my parents are both my relatives and my roommates?
You easy 2 points for you.
I do have romance though
So
also, so
that's true. So you have all
yeah,
3.
I do have all 3.
Whatever.
Although if never mind. I was just about to out myself on something that I do not want out on public media, so we're gonna
Save that for the
save that
after
for
party.
later. Great.
Ugh. If we ever go private chats, I don't really know how that works. If we ever go to private chats, maybe we'll tell you some fun stories if you pay to get there.
Oh yeah, if we ever get to the point where we can have a Patreon and like not feel like we're charging people for nothing,
Right,
maybe
right.
maybe we'll tell you our dirty secrets.
I love it. Maybe so. And maybe you'll keep listening still. But see. So, not a dirty secret. Today, we are talking about Hannibal, season 1, episode 9, Trial Norman. Probably Norman. I've been working on my French. I've got my 2-week streak,
Very nice.
so thriving. It aired May 23rd of 2013. It was rated 8.2 out of 10. Last week
Okay.
was 8.9. Do you have feelings about that?
I do have feelings about that. I really didn't hate last week's episode. I actually really
Sure.
enjoyed last week's episode. I did think that 8.9 was a
Mm-hmm.
little stretch. I would have probably gone closer to like 8.6. Um, but I don't know why this is rated. I will say the story of the week murder in this episode not as compelling. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
super into it. In fact, I almost forgot, other than the stark image of the totem pole, that there was a story of the week murder.
Right.
Could not have told you, cannot really give you any details about that. So I get that that takes some points off, but I don't know. There's some very big shit in this episode that I think should be addressed.
Yeah, I actually liked this episode better than most of the other ones we've seen.
Yeah.
I thought it had a better flow than a lot of them. And like, because there was a lot that happened and it was a lot that was like crazy and intense, but it flowed so well. You never felt like you were like off the mark when we jumped to something. Even when we did have the like totem pole scenes, like it came back down to Will's mental state and not actually the totem pole scene. So it was
Right,
never
right,
out of
right.
context with what we were dealing with. So I was also, I mean, 8.2 is not a bad rating, obviously. It's over
No.
8. It's a good rating, but it's just like based on how the rest of the show has been rated, I felt it ended up being a little bit low. Um, anyways, I had strong feelings when I read that, so I thought I'd check and see if you did too.
Yeah.
The number one song is Still Can't Hold Us by Macklemore. The number one movie is Fast and Furious 6 of 37.
Yep.
And the number one book is Dead Ever After by Charlene Harris. It is the last book in the Sookie Stackhouse series.
Mm.
And so this came out in 2013.
Yeah, this came
I
out on the day I moved to New York City.
oh,
Yeah.
I think that I think it was 2010 that I did my deep dive read of the Sookie Stackhouse series because it was one summer, and I think it was while I was still in high school, but it was like I was about to get out of high school or right between high school and college. I don't
Yeah.
remember. And I read and there's 11 or 12 of them, and I read all of them in like 2 weeks. I
Nice.
just pushed through. Like it was if you haven't read the series,
I have
anyone
not.
listening and Mary Kate, um, I definitely recommend it. I haven't watched the show yet, so I don't have feelings about
Right.
True Blood. Other people seem to like it, but the books were really good, and I really like Charlene Harris as a writer too, and as a person. So,
Very nice.
um, on this day, there was a lot of bad things, and none that really stood above another. A lot of
Mm.
like terrorist attacks, tragic accidents, but
Yeah.
like not one that like stood out. So I was like, I don't need to highlight one over another.
Yeah.
So some famous birthdays are
Yeah.
Joan Collins, Drew Carey, Rosemary Clooney. So like what a cast to be a part of.
Right.
It is World Turtle Day. And last but certainly not least, this is the one piece of news that made it. The Boy Scouts decided to allow openly gay youth to be in Boy Scouts.
That's wild that that is only 11 years ago that that happened.
I know. I know. So, but it's fine. It's fine now. It's too late. History can't rewrite itself. So here we are. Our director is Guillermo Navarro, who we've talked about before. Does a lot of work with Guillermo del Toro. Our writer is Steve Lightfoot, aka Robert Scott Frazier. Um, I couldn't find why those were AKAs. I couldn't find if one was his real name and the other was not. But they were like, sometimes credited as this and sometimes credited as this. And I was like, but he doesn't have a lot of social media and he doesn't have a lot of like articles about him.
That's so
Um,
odd.
my guess is Robert Scott Frazier is his name, and he was going by that before he decided to change to Steve Lightfoot. I don't know. But regardless, either of those names are his. He is known for The Punisher, the new Punisher series, Narcos, and Shantaram, which was an Apple TV series that only had one season, but it had his name, it starts with an H. Oh God, what is his name?
Wait, what is the
I think
show again?
Shantaram or Shantaram. I
Oh, no,
think
I
I think it
know.
was the guy from what's the bike show? Sons of Anarchy. Who's the main guy? Do you remember his name?
And Sons of Anarchy, isn't that Ryan Hurst?
No, he's not the main one.
Oh,
I don't think.
I don't know. Oh,
Let's see.
Charlie Hunnam.
Yes, he stars in this show.
Okay.
Um, but it only got one season. He is a British television writer by trade. And he is currently working on a show called Oh yes.
I was just about to say something. You finish your sentence.
Okay. He is currently working on a show called Noir,
That's what I
which
was
is
gonna.
starring Nicolas Cage, and it is about Spider-Man Noir, who is one of the characters in Into the Spider-Verse, one of the Peter Parker versions.
Let me tell you.
And I don't think I've seen the second one. Oh, I did. I watched the second one on the
Yeah.
plane.
Okay.
But yeah.
This Spider-Man Noir is not in the second one, so it doesn't matter. But let me tell you how I feel about this. When I saw a news article that said official blah 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 whatever Spider-Man Noir starring Nicolas Cage, I lost my mind. I went to school. I went to my seventh graders because my seventh graders were where I talk about whenever I lose my mind about TV. And I said, "Oh my God, guys, did you see?" And I told them, I said, Spider-Man Noir is going to be made into a live action series. And Anthony, my student who is always on the same wavelength as me, goes, "But is it Nicolas Cage?" I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Oh my God." And so then we freaked out. And then nobody else in the room knew what was happening, but the two of us were very excited. And then on Monday,
Well,
when I came to school, he said, "Miss Lodick, how do you feel about Acolyte?" I said, "My sister's wedding was this weekend." He goes, "Never mind, I'll talk to you next week." Thank you.
yeah, I haven't watched that quite yet either.
Me either.
It keeps popping up.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be filmed in 23 and then it got pushed back because of the strike. So it is now going to start filming this September. So you have a minute before it comes out.
No, I know, but that doesn't stop me from being
But
fucking hella
yes,
excited.
but
I said Nicolas Cage is finally gonna get to be in a superhero movie, and then I go, listen, I know he
well,
was
they said
already
he played it.
he was no, he was the voice of Spider-Man Noir in Spider-Verse. Yes. He already did that. But I know that you probably, I don't know how much you know about the failed Superman movie starring Nicolas Cage that never actually got off the ground. Um,
I wasn't sure if that was real or not. I haven't
oh
done a
no.
deep dive,
No,
but
it is
it was
100%
real.
real. 100% real. Nicolas Cage has always wanted to be in a superhero movie. I was so excited. And then I said, okay, I guess we're pretending that Ghost Rider didn't happen, but like a lot of people pretend that Ghost Rider didn't happen. So like let's just move on from that and say Nicolas Cage is finally getting to do a superhero.
Hmm. Yeah, I just watched Ghost Rider for the first time like last year in my Marvel
Yep.
rewatch.
This same student once made me a video of him doing a voodoo dance around a DVD of Ghost Rider 2 and making it disappear.
Mhm.
So,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Um,
good times.
well, um, Steve Lightfoot is working on it. So good old Steve Robert. Um, and our editor is Ben Wilkinson, who also had edited Cookie and Sorbet. So we've seen him before. And then our character member of the week is Scott Thompson, who plays Jimmy Price. We don't know his name because they don't tell us his name hardly ever, if at all. But
Is that
he's the
the
other
Irish?
lab
Is he
guy.
that the Irish sounding lab guy?
Yeah, he's not Irish, but yeah, he's the one that's the one you're thinking of.
He
It's
definitely has,
him,
yes, no,
Z.
but he definitely has an
Yeah,
accent.
he does have an accent, but he's Canadian.
Just listen, I believe you that the actor is Canadian. And honestly, the character might also supposed to be Canadian. In this episode, there was definitely an Irish accent.
Well,
For
Jimmy
no,
Price could definitely be an Irish. It makes me think of Jimmy from New York, New York.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So I,
could totally be in that bag.
when he was talking at the beginning, I go, first of all, did you have that accent last episode? And then I go, second, were you in another episode?
Yes, he's been in most of the episodes, if not
Yes, no,
all.
and then I thought about it, and he was the one who was talking about the USB cords for the kidneys
Mhm.
and stuff. So like for sure, this was already a thing that happened. I don't think the accent was there the whole
I don't
time.
think it was either. I don't think it was either. Um, but yeah, so this is him.
Great.
He is known for The Kids in the Hall, which I've never heard of, but is in 1988 and future times. There was one as recent as 2022.
Yeah,
Sketch comedy.
yeah.
I'm interested because I love sketch comedy.
Oh,
Um,
you never heard of Kids in the Hall?
never heard of it. There is
Yeah,
7,000 of them,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
should have heard of it before now. But yep. So he is one of the guys in that.
Yeah.
The pacifier, and but I'm Chris Jericho. Those are the three things he's known for.
That is amazing.
So what a time. So he is also a survivor of the 1975 Brampton Junior High shooting. Um, and he also like 2000,
Like Brampton, wait, Brampton, Ontario?
yeah, 1975.
I mean, I wasn't alive, but Brampton,
Right.
Ontario is like 5 minutes away from me.
Oh, well, I would guess that's the
That's why I
one.
was like, what?
Yes. I didn't follow all of that, but he is from Ontario and the school was called Brampton. So I would assume that
Yeah.
that is the one. Yeah. And then
Yeah, no,
so he had
one of my best friends taught in Brampton. Clearly not in the 70s because he's younger than I
right.
am, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, so he had this shooting that he grew up with, and then he did something like with like Saddam Hussein tried to go get some like news footage in the like 2000 year, and he got all this stuff, and then he started getting like really bad death threats and all this stuff happened. And so he went to make this like one man play about it. And on September 10th of 2001, all the posters went up around New York for him to do this play about these two tragic accidents that he went through, one of them being related to Iran and ISIS, or not ISIS, what is it? Who are they? Did they, you
Well,
know,
well,
the
no.
terrorists.
Yeah, well, it depends. If we're talking about Afghanistan, it's Al Qaeda and the Taliban. But if it was
Al Qaeda, that's the one.
okay, I was like,
Yeah.
no, because ISIS didn't exist yet at that time.
I know I said that and I was like, that's not it. That's
Yeah,
not
no, it
right.
would be Al Qaeda at that time.
Yeah. So Al Qaeda, and he has this story about that where they've given him death threats. He has this story about this shooting, mass shooting he had in junior high, puts up posters about it September 10th, 2001. And then, of course, the next day is when the towers are hit. And so the show never comes to fruition, as
I
you can imagine.
can't
So,
imagine why.
so what a time for him. But he was in an improv group called the Love Cats,
Obsessed.
much happier topics.
Honestly, though,
Went
probably not. Improv gets real dark sometimes for no fucking
It
reason.
does. I mean, anything in entertainment does. Um, but he attended York University, but he was asked to leave in his third year for being quote unquote disruptive. I don't
Which
know what
is
that means.
that is so funny to me because there's a saying around the general Toronto, Niagara area that making fun of how easy it is to get into York University. And like my friend told me that like literally they say if you can hold a fork, you can go to York. So to manage to get kicked out of York, impressive.
Yeah. Um, he also in 2009 was diagnosed with B-cell non-Hodgkin's gastric lymphoma, but he got treated and he has been cancer-free ever since. So
Very nice.
he is thriving and rocking and rolling.
All right.
All right. Are you ready to get to the episode?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So we have some flashbacks that are obviously related with Abigail, the Hobbs stuff, all of these things. So we start with Jack and Will in West Virginia on the beach. And
Which is confusing to me because I didn't know there were beaches in West Virginia.
so that's one of the trivia pieces is that there are no beaches in West
Okay,
Virginia.
cool.
There is a lake south
Yeah,
of um I forget the name of the town, West Virginia town that they're in. But
yeah,
people, I ended up on the Reddit, and people who live there are like, it is super rocky. It looks nothing like a regular beach. Like it's not even like a lake beach. It's just rocks and water.
yeah.
And
Because I've spent a significant amount of time in West Virginia, more than I would
Mhm.
like to have spent, just because of the number of times that I've been stranded there due to hitting deers, which is more than once. The number of things in my life that are a Doofenshmirtz line cannot. Do you know that line?
I
From
don't.
from Phineas and Ferb, Dr. Doofenshmirtz says, "If I had a nickel for every time that happened, I'd only have two nickels, but it's still weird that it
Oh
happened
yeah,
twice."
yeah,
And that is my life in a nutshell. Things that happen to me that happen more than once, and I couldn't explain why they happened once, let alone twice.
right.
But yeah, so I've spent a significant amount of time in West Virginia, and I was watching that, and I was like, this this is definitely a northern West Coast beach. Like this is an
Oh yeah,
Oregon, this is like an Oregon, Washington, Vancouver beach. There is nothing about this that is in West Virginia. Just so we're very
correct,
clear about that.
correct. Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. Um, but yeah, so we are on this beach with Will and Jack, and there's a totem pole of body parts,
Which
and there,
also, which also definitely adds to the fact that this felt very West Coast because totem poles are definitely something that only exist in Native American cultures on the West Coast.
right.
People just assume that they have to do with Native American cultures everywhere. They don't. The natives in like the Inuits in Alaska and the natives in the upper like Pacific Northwest region were the only ones who ever had totem poles.
Yep. So another check for Pacific Northwest. But around this pole that is built of bones and body parts, we see that there are 7 freshly dug graves where they have taken bodies out, but they are very precise, meaning that it was probably the same killer for all 7 of them. And we also see that only one of the bodies is actually a recent kill. The rest of them have been there for a minute.
Yeah, my grandma thought it was just a regular tree.
Do you need new glasses?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay.
But she was
I
like,
guess that's fine.
is that just a tree on the beach? I go, it's a totem pole. She goes, oh, really? I go, made of human bodies. She goes, what are we watching? I said, it's based on the Hannibal Lecter books. She goes, oh, well, then I'm into it.
Tell your grandma to get on Spotify and look up Death and Aliens and
Oh,
listen.
no, she has listened to the podcast before because she wants to know why Monica swears so much in the podcast episodes. She goes, yeah, when Monica was doing that with you, she just swears so much. And I'm just like, you little shit, watch your language. I wonder where she gets it from.
Counterproductive, yeah. Oh, bless her heart. Um, oh. So at this moment, we have Will clearly losing a little bit, and his face goes to this like greenish tint, similar to what mine currently looks like under this lighting. And then it goes from green to like yellow before it starts kind of like closing over, and we get into the rewind that this is. And then we follow through this little murder. And he says that the monument was planned with precision. He had this specific number of bodies that he had this specific placement for. And we learned the last victim was still alive while he was putting the pole together and watched the rest of the pole being designed.
Yeah.
And then his head was put on the top with the feet beside him. And all I could think about during this entire scene was how awful was this for Hugh Dancy to film? Like
with strapping the body parts to it.
Yeah. I get that it's not real body parts.
Right.
I understand how TV works.
Honestly, between the body part totem pole and the Beetlejuice-esque violin man neck thing last week, I was like, I couldn't do this.
No, I don't know how he does it, but
and the
angel
and the angels too. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's but that's all I could think about because it was like
and the deer and the girl and the girls on the girls on the deer antlers too.
Yeah.
Like this whole show is just fucked.
Yeah. But it was like a 5-second scene. It felt so long though. I was like,
the cannibalism isn't even the most fucked up part of the show.
That's relatively normal. That part's fine. Like maybe everyone in the show should be a cannibal. It'd be a nicer show. So who knows?
Oh.
But yeah, so then when Will comes back too from this rewind, he's at Hannibal's office and he doesn't know how he got there.
That was wild to me. I was sure I missed something.
I know. But we learned that Hannibal was 3.5 hours from where they were in West Virginia. So somehow and his car is outside. So somehow Will did his rewind, finished up this crime scene situation, got into his car, drove all the way to Hannibal's office, got out of his car, got into the office, and then came to. So if it's a 3.5 hour drive, minimum this man has lost 4 hours.
That is like dissociating to a level that I am not comfortable with.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm not comfortable with knowing anyone's capable of dissociating for that long.
And functioning. Like it's one thing if you're dissociating like and sitting still.
Right.
But like you're dissociating and no one knows you did, and you've completely done 4 hours without killing anyone or yourself on accident because you didn't know what was going on. Like,
I mean, to be fair, I absolutely know someone with dissociative identity disorder, and that is a thing that happens. And like when they have a split personality situation, the one personality has no idea what the other one did. But like to find out as an adult with no knowledge of having ever had that before, that you just did that.
Because I was going to say it's different when you know that there's another personality that takes over. Like at least you know someone's still in charge, so you're not going to die.
Yeah, and you might not like it. You might have issues with your other personality. You might want theirs. Whatever the deal is. To have no concept of what is happening, and especially at that point in your adult life.
Yeah.
Like if you're a teenager and you're having blackouts and you're trying to figure it out, like Norman.
Sure.
Like, and
Just
not
like
to
our friend
say,
Norman.
like our friend Norman. Like, not to say that what Norman did was great, obviously, not
Right.
condoning it, but like Norman was young enough and having blackouts and being aware of the blackouts existing and trying to figure out what was happening. And if his mother hadn't lied to him about his blackouts, he might have figured out that he was dissociating sooner.
Yeah.
Will is a fully doctorated man. Oh, wait, no, he doesn't have a doctorate. No, he said that he does not have a doctorate. He's not a
You're
doctor,
right. You're
but
right.
he is at
But
least
may as well. May as
right.
well, based
He's
on all of
at
his
least educated
education.
enough to be a professor at a school. Like so, like
Yeah.
minimum bachelor's degree, probably a master's degree.
And be a professor at Quantico, not just like
Right.
Joe
So
Joe Blow
yeah,
down
so
the
he's
street.
like minimum 6 years of college.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's terrifying for him. And he
Yeah.
starts going through all of his issues. So Hannibal tells him, he's like, you're dissociating because of the abuse of the emotional abuse. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm fine. I haven't, like, I had a decent childhood. Everything's okay. And he's like, no, no, no. I mean, the emotional abuse that, like, is being caused by your empathy disorder because you empathize too much. So every time you're going to these scenes, you're feeling everyone's pain and it's just coming on you and coming on you.
Yeah.
And so he starts going through and he's like, well, maybe I just need to get, my brain checked because I'm hallucinating, I'm sleepwalking, I'm dissociating now. And he was like, it's just something wrong with my brain. Like it's
Right.
like a tumor or something. And Hannibal's like, I don't think so. Um, and this whole time there's just this like one like tone that they're using. They're not even using like music. They're just using this tone throughout this whole scene. And it just makes it so much more on edge. Like I just felt this whole episode had a lot of very intense scenes, I felt
Yeah.
like. And then so Hannibal's talking through this, and he's like, well, this is, what we do or whatever. And he's like, we can figure out what's happening, what's going on. And he says, because I don't want you to wake up and see a totem of your own making. And I was like, if that is not the biggest wake up call,
Right.
like, ugh. And I think that's also what Will's worried about. He didn't say it out loud, but I think that's also what he's worried about, especially now. So now we go to our good friend Abigail, who we said would come back this episode. So here she is.
Yeah.
And we learn that she still wakes up hearing her dad's voice because she's sitting in group. And so they're talking about all of these things that like are happening and how it's all going. And then we start getting flashbacks of the murders while she's talking. And then she starts seeing the dead girls in her group. And then they fill up her group. And then we see the brother,
Yeah.
Nicholas, who died. And then
Yeah.
we learn that she is having a nightmare and she wakes up
Well, and
looking deranged.
she says, my dad said that he had to kill them
Mhm.
or else he'd kill me. And then
Yeah.
like all of the girls are like, I wish he would have killed you. I wish he would have killed you. I wish he would have killed you. And then the brother is like, yeah, I wish he would have killed you because then you wouldn't have killed me.
Mhm. So she wakes up from this nightmare in a deranged cold sweat is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. And then we pop over to Jack's office and Will goes in to apologize. And he says, sorry about the whole situation. And Jack's like, what are you talking about? He's like, at the crime scene. And he's like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
He's like, is there something you need to tell me?
yeah. And he was like, oh, the bodies got to me. And I thought it was more obvious. And then Jack's like, no, didn't notice anything. And he's like, do you want to tell me like what's going on? Obviously something. And he's like, no, no problem. Just wanted to make sure I didn't seem a little too out of it. Peace. See you later.
I'm trying to figure out if Jack is oblivious, negligent, or like malicious. Because like what is happening? How is he unaware of how fucked up Will is right now?
I think he's negligent. I don't think it's malicious. I don't think he wants to hurt Will. I think he knows that Will is really his only is his best chance at solving any of these crimes. So he's being more negligent. He's like letting it happen.
Yeah.
Um, Even though he knows it's, killing Will basically.
Right.
Um, but I think he noticed. I mean, they had that scene in the barn where they talked about it. Like he obviously knows that it's getting to Will.
The longer it goes on and the more he acts like it's not an issue, the more I doubt whether he has good intentions or not.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair.
Which is funny
Um,
because the show with a bunch of serial killers, the fucking FBI director is the one who I'm like, do we like him or not?
this tracks for you. This is your track record being repeated. Um, you
Whatever.
and you and Bloom hang out together with your good sense of character judgment. So we go to the psych facility and we learn that Abigail's house was sold. And Freddie's there telling her that she wants to write a book for her, and they're talking about it. And she's like, well, I'll be okay. I have some money. They sold the house. I'm sure it's not worth anything, but whatever. And Freddie's like, no, it's not worth anything because all of those girls' families filed wrongful death suits. And so anything that would have come out of it goes to them. She
Yeah.
was like, so you don't have anything from your parents. You have to make your own money at this point. And they discuss like Bill Graham and his like what she thinks about him, and like they discuss that everyone thinks she's guilty. And she's like, you just got to put it on the record. And Abigail agrees to tell her story with Freddie. So that's good. That's
Just
good.
such a good decision.
Oh, isn't it? So we go back, we're in the lab now, and they're examining the bodies, and it turns out there's 17 of them. So we have those 7 freshly dug graves. We have the 8th person who is the one on the top of the totem. And then
Yeah.
we have how does math work? 9 more 9 more bodies that were grave robbed. So
But
we
is this where Will says that even the ones that were grave robbed
mhm.
were murdered by the same person?
Yes, he
Yeah.
says that they were all murdered by the same person, but they talk about how he didn't really torture his victims because the last guy, Joel, that was killed, that's on the top of the totem pole,
Yeah.
he stabbed him in the heart to kill him, but then all of the dismemberment and all of that was done post-mortem. And so
Yeah.
he didn't torture these people, he just killed them. And then they're looking at the unmarked graves, and they're like, he's like, well, what happened? Because this guy killed everyone. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, a lot of these were accidental deaths. Like, this is what happened here. Um, and so
And
he
he,
brings the
and he
victims.
was like, yeah, no, I know that it looks that way, but it
Yeah.
wasn't.
And so he brings the victims to his class, and he's like, this guy died from suicide. This guy died from like whatever, heart attack. I don't know. All these different things. And then after, our 6th person he mentions or so, we hear Bloom walk in, and turns out there's no one else in the room.
He's just talking to himself.
She thinks he's practicing a PowerPoint.
But also in our original vision, he was showing clips, but when
Mhm.
Bloom walks in the room, the screen was off.
So
So
he's not
I
even doing that.
so I think it's another time jump.
Mhm. I think so too.
Like
Um,
I think it started in class and then he dissociated so hard that he didn't realize he was still standing there.
yeah, and that's very possible. Um, yeah, and so she says she regretted leaving his house the other night. And then they have this whole unnecessary verbal back and forth that I get it. I get that whoever the writer or one of the writers is like, let's do this fun back and forth to show this cutesy moment. It was so unnecessary. I was like, this is lasting way too long.
I didn't mind.
I was so annoyed by it. I felt it was so unnecessary. But then she finally tells him, she's like, I do have feelings for you, but we can't be together. And he tells her, he's like, well, tell me why. And like, don't lie to me. Like, I want to know, the real truth or whatever. And she's like, it's because I think you're unstable. And I was like, that is the truest thing anyone has ever said to anyone else. Um, and then she asks if he feels unstable, and he nods because he also thinks he's unstable.
Correct, because he's unstable.
Because he's unstable,
Surprise.
yeah. So yeah, so then we go back to the psych house. And Will and Hannibal have gone to visit Abigail. And they learned about the book and they're trying to talk her out of it. They're like, this is
Yeah.
not a good idea. Like, you're going to say all
Yeah.
these things and everybody's going to open up all these new wormholes. And Hannibal tells her, you can't control what comes through that door. Like, once you've opened it, everyone starts pouring in with questions
Yeah.
and stories and etc. Um, and then we have this dark scene where we see someone unburying Nicholas, the brother. Who did you think this was?
I thought it was Hannibal.
I also thought it was Hannibal.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he's trying to stir things up to show her that this can't be the way things are.
Right. That's exactly what I thought was happening.
We'll tell you later we were wrong. Um, so
So
we're back at the
wrong.
lab, and Will starts talking about the rankings on the totem pole. And he's like, based on the year of kill, he's like, they're based on the year of killing. So the newest one's on the top, the oldest one's on the bottom, which is not really how totem poles work. It's the lowest one is usually the most like prominent, prestigious. If they do a ranking, but for the most part, they don't even really use them as a ranking system. But if they do, it's the opposite of what everyone thinks it is.
Yeah.
So,
Well, because you build from underneath, basically, you
mhm.
take it, and when you add to it, you lift up what's already done and put it on top. You don't climb on top to put it, you actually add from the bottom up.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. I
Yeah.
didn't realize
Because,
that.
I mean, they don't have ladders.
That's true.
So it's
That's
a
true.
carving, and then that's why there's usually like antlers or wings or something. That's what you would use to lift it to attach it to the newest piece.
Mm, yep, that makes sense. Um, yeah, so they're in the lab, they're talking about the totem pole, and he's like, Summers and Marshall have a connection. He's like, I don't know what it is, but they're connected. And then Jack pulls him to the side in the middle of this, so we don't learn what that connection is yet. He
Yeah.
pulls him to the side and he's like, I need to talk to you. And he says the brother that was killed, who is Nicholas, was found. He's been unburied, but we can't tell for how long he's been dead. But he's dead. And Jack is convinced Abigail knows something about it. I mean, she does. But
Yeah.
he's convinced and he's like, we gotta talk to her. I want her to.
To Jack's credit, unlike the conclusions he's been jumping to with no proof at other points in this series, his reason for jumping to the conclusion is the last time anyone saw him was the night he attacked Abigail.
Right.
And he was gutted with a hunting knife. So he is actually at least using evidence this time to question Abigail instead of just wildly jumping to conclusions.
Correct. So
whether his wild conclusions are correct or not is not the issue. It's like I tell my students, your answer can be correct, but if you can't justify it, no, it's not.
Yeah. Right. 100%. And so he wants her to come identify the body, and Bloom's like, it's already been identified. He's like, but not by her. And he's right, but if he wasn't, then this would be really harsh.
Yeah.
But we learned that he also knows that she's been running away from, the psych facility. And he wants to know why. So then we bring in Abigail. She's IDing the body with Jack, and Bloom is there with her.
Oh, and Will at the first point, Will wants to be in the room when she gets questioned, and Jack's like, the fuck you will be.
Yeah, he's like, I can't trust that you can do that, basically.
Yeah.
So Jack asks Abigail if she's seen Nicholas since that night. And Bloom is so mad about it. She's like, you don't need to be asking questions. Like, he won't cover up the body because he wants to, obviously the shock
Make
value
her
of it.
uncomfortable, yeah.
All right. And he is like, just leave her alone. And he's like, you're here on a courtesy. Like, be here or don't. Like, that's how it is. And then he's like, so where do you go when you leave this place? And she's like, I just go to be alone. Could be the city, could be the forest. And he asks if she's ever met up with Nick, and he's like, absolutely not. And then he asks if she knows anything about Nick's death. And she doesn't answer the question. She just talks about how Hannibal saved her. And I was like, you
Yeah.
are not a good liar.
Yeah.
So,
Not the best way to do that.
right. And so she's in her feelings now and has marched away. And Bloom tells Jack that she's definitely hiding something, but it's not this. And she says it's not this because whether or not she fully believes in Abigail, she fully believes Hannibal because he has no reason to lie.
Which is the most ironic shit I've ever heard in my life.
So I bet we could throw her any of oh Phil Flack, I forgot his name. Any of the American Horror Story characters, and she'd fall in love with him just like you.
Evan Peters.
Evan Peters, thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
To be
and then we have
fair, to be fair, the most recent one was not a bad guy.
which one did we just watch? Oh, Asylum, yeah.
Yeah.
I also just finished the second part of um Delicate Condition. Spoiler alert, he's not in that season,
I was gonna
but
say he's not in this season then.
yeah, no. Just but then I couldn't remember where we were.
Yeah,
Um,
no, in Asylum, Kit is a great guy.
yeah. Spoiler alert, if you didn't listen to our season, if you didn't, that's your fault.
Correct.
So go listen to our season. Um, so then we go to Hannibal and Abigail, and she's telling him, she's like, I think something's wrong. Like, I don't think Nick was a monster. Like, he was worried that, about his sister. He was upset about that, but I don't think he was a monster. I don't think he was going to kill me or anything. And he's like, well, do you feel like a monster? And she was like, sometimes.
Yeah. Just
And then he asks her why she unburied the body. And we learned that Hannibal did not do it, but our girl who escapes her mental facility has unburied Nick's body. And Hannibal, go ahead.
to be fair, her reason for doing it, while I don't agree with it, it kind of made sense.
Right. Like it kind of makes sense. It's kind of reasonable. She's trying to get ahead of stuff, but also like Hannibal buried this body. No one's finding it. So,
Right. But
you
also she
know,
doesn't really know that.
because she's a baby.
But also, if you were going to intentionally open the case to get ahead of it, you should have practiced your lie better. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Right. You should have been prepared. Like you should have been prepared for questioning. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah,
Crazy
stupid.
girl. Anyway, so then Hannibal says that she jeopardized both of them, and he's not sure how to move forward with trusting her at this point. He's like, I don't know if this is something that I'll be able to do. We go to the lab.
Which turned out to be a little bit more manipulative than I really
Oh, I
thought it
mean,
was in that. I mean, and I know
of
it's Hannibal
course.
and I know that that's what he does, but like it really for a moment felt like, how am I supposed to help you keep your secrets if you're going to fuck with me?
Sure.
But it was a little deeper than that.
It always is. So we're back in the lab, and we're talking about Fletcher Marshall and Joel Summers. And we learn, I'm sorry, I'm getting the hiccups, and I don't know where they came from, but I can't breathe now. Um, so we learn that Fletcher is Joel Summers' father. However, he is not the biological father.
That was a
So
doozy.
what's a doozy. So Jack and Will have decided they're going to see the guy who there was a guy, Lee. I probably wrote his last name down. Lee Wells, who was questioned when Fletcher Marshall was killed, but ended up getting away with it. They said it wasn't him. They're deciding they're going to go question this guy now.
Yeah.
And he was having an affair with the mom. And he did do this, all of it. He killed all 17 people and straight up confesses to it. And he's
And
like,
Anne says that they only even caught him because he was tired and wanted to be caught.
right, that's why he killed Joel, was to be caught. And they're like, well, why else? And he was like, because he was never meant to be. Because he was having an affair with the Joel's mom.
Yeah.
And he thought that he should have been the one having a kid and not the other guy. And he said prison would be a luxury and he won't be forgotten now. And Will breaks the news to him that Joel was actually his son. And so now he has ruined his legacy because he killed the one person that could have carried it on.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
he rubs salt in the wound by being like, he was biologically your son, and she still chose to raise him with Fletcher.
yo. So this man, he was like she saw
She saw who
the
you
evil
really
inside
were.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I thought for sure he was going to kill himself because that's always what happens when
That's
someone
always what
leaves you to
happens in
find
those
them.
moments. Yeah.
But no, this man was just ready to go to prison because he couldn't afford to keep himself alive anymore. And he
Which
needed to be
is
respected.
such a comment on the prison industrial complex that like I can't even get into it, but
I
like
know. Oh yeah, for sure. Um, but then we go to Will's nightmare and he sees Abigail, he sees Nick, and then he sees himself stabbing Nick and gutting him. And then it flips, and Abigail is doing the same thing to Will. And now he knows it was Abigail who killed Nicholas
he accidentally uses his weird crime scene rewind.
in his nightmare. Yeah. So he immediately goes to Hannibal's office, as he does, and he tells Hannibal about Abigail. And Hannibal tells him everything
Yeah.
because, of course, he does. They're besties. And Hannibal says it wasn't a crime. He was like, it was just self defense, but I had to protect her because what do you think is going to happen if people know that she killed him, even in self defense?
They're
Jack's going to bring her down.
they're gonna blame her for what
Yeah.
her father did. They're gonna tear her apart, and we won't be able to protect her from that.
Yeah. And he tells him, he says, we are her fathers now. We have to protect her.
What the
And Will
fuck?
buys in. Oh my God. So
Because
wild.
he's unstable.
I know. God bless. And so then we pop over to Hannibal's house where we have our new dinner party with Freddie, Abigail, Will, and Hannibal. What a dream team. And they're talking about Freddie's book. And they're going over different stuff. And Will is just kind of being a little frantic about everything. And then Abigail and Hannibal are in the kitchen. Abigail says she knows Will knows. And Hannibal's like, yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Yeah, she's like,
And
well,
says there's no reason.
she's like, he knows, doesn't he? And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, well,
Yeah. He's like, but there's no reason to worry.
he's not gonna turn us in.
Yeah. And then he's like, but there are other things you're holding on to that you don't have to necessarily. And she says she admitted to helping him because she knew that it was her or the other girls. And so she was acting as bait, just like Nicholas thought she was, to befriend these girls and bring them to her father so he could kill them because she knew it was her or them. And Hannibal already knew that, obviously, because he's
Yeah,
Hannibal.
yeah.
And he says that him and Will are going to protect her. And we get a flashback to what I imagine is one of the first girls that she befriended. And that's where it ends on Hobbs' creepy smile.
So fucked.
I think I did all of the trivia. Oh, the Trial Normand
Yeah.
is Calvados is the basis of the tradition of the Trial Normand or the Norman Hole. And it's a small drink of Calvados taken between courses in a very long meal, sometimes with apple or pear sorbet, supposedly to reawaken the appetite. So that is what that is.
Which makes perfect sense because of the placement.
Reawaken my appetite. I'll tell you through
Yeah.
that. Um,
Wild.
yeah, and then the other thing was the error about there not being oceans in West Virginia. Um, so yeah, that's our episode. What do you think?
I'm dumbfounded.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like on the one hand, it's kind of exactly what you would think would happen. Like the story is almost too formulaic in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, but also I'm still shocked by it.
Well, and because you think about like Hannibal Lecter is probably one of the first, not the first, but one of like the first true serial killers that we see a deep analysis of, like in pop culture.
Yeah.
And so everyone since then has kind of been compared to him. So this coming out in 2013, we know because we've seen everything else compared to his character, but
Yeah, but
it's
I
being
don't
true to
even
the story,
yeah,
you know?
it's not even the true to the character. It's just kind of the plot through line
Yeah.
feels a little they do a really, really good job and the characters are compelling and the cinematography is compelling, but at the end of the day, we could have predicted that that's where this was going.
Yeah. No,
So,
and I agree. I agree. I don't know that I'm as bothered by knowing because it's specifically Hannibal. Like because it's a story I'm already familiar with, because it's one that like
and that's
we
fair.
know how it's going to go, and I think that's why it doesn't bother me. But I also could see like if you're starting here, like if you don't know anything about Hannibal Lecter, if you're watching the show and you're like, oh, I predicted everything, like and they are, and it's a new storyline. I mean, it's as far as I know, Abigail is not in the books,
Yeah.
and so like I can also see not wanting to be spoiled,
And
because yeah, truly, there's not a lot that's
yeah,
shocking.
right.
It's more the way they handle it that's shocking, as opposed to the actual like plot line that's shocking.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because I didn't feel, and I think maybe that's why this episode is so much lower in the sense because there's a lot to this episode and it is a re-appetite whet. It's really good. It's great with the characters that we have come to be um invested in. But I think like I could have told you in episode 2 that Freddie was gonna fuck something up and Abigail was gonna come clean. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas last week, the whole Tobias and um
Franklin.
Franklin story was genuinely, I had no idea. Every twist and turn of that story was
Yeah,
wild to me. So I think that that kind of like this one, while done well, was very formulaic. Last week was
yeah.
wild.
Which makes sense too, because
Yeah.
this is part of the through line, whereas that was a one-off. I mean, it was two
Yeah.
episodes, but it was a one-off story, and so they're going to make that a little more, you
Yeah.
know, heightened, anyways. Because they do like if they gave us everything this episode, what are they going to do for the next three? This is episode 9 of 13.
Yeah.
Um, so or of 12, something. I don't know, 12 or 13. So we have 4 episodes left, I think, before the finale. Um, but yeah, no, I get that. But I just really liked how well it felt like it flowed.
Oh no, yeah, it was well done.
Yeah.
My criticism
So
has nothing to do with the execution.
yeah. So what do you think is happening next?
Well, I think that Will is I think that Hannibal is going to try to hide the truth from Will for as long as possible, but Will's gonna find
Mhm.
it in some tragic way, and it's gonna be the thing that fucking breaks the camel's back, and Will's gonna spiral and do something fucking insane.
I think that's gonna be finale though.
No, 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 I know. That's like what I think, but I
Yeah.
think like
You just mean like
next
in the future,
in the
yeah.
future, I think the next episode is gonna be focused a lot on Hannibal negotiating and hiding and moving things to try to keep it from Will.
Yeah.
And I think
I
like
think
the
we're gonna
eventual through line will be the
yeah.
disaster.
I think we're gonna have Hannibal doing that, but like in a very background way. Like I think there's gonna be some other major story of the week show, like
Oh,
for the next
sure, sure, sure,
episode.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so I think they're gonna try and like bury it a little bit behind what's going on, but I
Well,
think we'll still be
and
able
I
to see
think
it, you
I
know?
think that's going to be the way that they spread it out is by
Mhm.
having it behind the story of the week thing. But I
Yeah.
think in terms of the Abigail plot, next week's will be the how to brush things under the rug part of
Because
it.
that's all we have left is Abigail's story and Will's deterioration.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else that we need to figure out before the end of the
I'm a
season.
little bit afraid that when Will snaps, Alana's going to be who he kills.
Oh gosh.
I'm a
I
little bit
hope
of
not.
I hope not too, but I'm a little bit afraid that Will's gonna snap and hurt Alana, and that is how that's gonna go down.
So I think that Will's gonna dissociate. Hannibal's gonna kill someone, and Will's gonna think it was him. Because I think that something is gonna happen with Will where with his unstableness that he becomes too um like what's the word I'm looking for? Like off kilter, like he's loose cannon, a little bit too much of a loose cannon for Hannibal. And
Yeah.
I think Hannibal's gonna want to get him committed, and so
Well,
he's gonna kill someone and make it look like
I
Will.
think that that's the big question is Will's instability going to lead him to actually commit a crime, or is he going to take the fall for something? And I think that either one is fully plausible at this point.
I think so too. I think so too. So we'll see. So in the meantime, who do you want to punch in the face?
Okay.
That's what I would have said too. Yeah, she's
I know
God, she's
I
a
made
lot.
it seem like I was thinking about that, but there was no thought. That
Yeah,
was
no, for sure, for sure. I think because you punched Abigail, I'm gonna go with Jack because I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think he's letting Will deteriorate, knowing it's happening, but trying to selfishly keep him working.
yeah.
And like, even though it is to technically save lives, like you can't kill one life to save 10. Like that's not how it works. You don't get
Yeah.
to pick one life over the others, you know? So, um, yeah. So I'm gonna pick him. So who then is your MVP?
This one is much trickier, really.
Yeah.
And like I faltered, like I almost picked Hannibal until I really processed the fact that the things that I thought he was doing that were nice were probably way more gaslighty than I wanted them to
Mhm.
be. Um, so I am going to go with Alana for like just telling the truth the whole time.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I was leaning towards her as well because I'm also not super sure who to pick. But I guess because you picked her, I'll have to go with Will. I don't think he did anything necessarily like great, but all of the things he did were with good intention.
Yeah.
So I
I was
guess
like, let's just fuck it and pick the serial killer because like
right. I know.
everybody else.
I guess that's as good as we get right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. Well, that is our episode. So we'll see what happens next week. If you have any thoughts, feelings, concerns, etc., you can email us deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me at CECloud13.
And you can find me at EMKAY_superstar.
And we'll see you Sunday for Sci-Fi Sunday.
Bye.